Authenticity isn't a nice to have in leadership. It's a non-negotiable. In a world full of facades, only your truth is the boldest move you can make. Welcome to the Danny V Show, the podcast for high-performing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs ready to lead with elegance, courage, and radical responsibility. I'm Danny V, and I'm here to help you strip away the fluff and step fully into your power at the boardroom and in business. In each episode, we'll share no-nonsense insights and real conversations on what it takes to show up authentically, make tough decisions with grace, and create impact at the highest levels. So if you're ready to own your voice and lead on your terms, you're in the right place. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the Danny V Show. At episode 19, I am so excited that we will be joined by the incredible Madelyn Carafa. But let's look back at episode 18 first. If you haven't watched it, I dive into the difference between authentic leadership and performing confidence. So if you haven't listened, jump back to episode 18. But today, episode 19, we are having a great conversation with the powerhouse behind the Healthy Hustlers podcast, an iconic brand that has inspired thousands with honest conversations about health, mindset, and personal growth. Madelyn has interviewed some of the most influential voices in wellness, built a thriving community around authenticity, and has recently expanded her work into coaching, where she helps women step into their own self-leadership with clarity and confidence in launching their podcasts. Her journey is a testament to building with intention, staying true to values, and evolving fiercely as both a brand and a leader. So let's dive into it. Welcome to the Danny V Show, Maddie. It is so wonderful to have you and such an honor that you've made the time to share your absolute knowledge with my audience.
Danny, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Amazing. So let's dive in. What I really want to start with, Maddie, is that you've built an inspiring career platform through your incredible podcast, The Healthy Hustlers, and it's been such a role of self-leadership being played out on this journey. And I'd love you to share with my audience how you've really shaped those decisions to really make your business move, also while juggling life as a mum.
Yes. Well, I feel like, Danny, you're really making me strengthen a new muscle in today's interview because I'm definitely proud of what I've created, absolutely. But then talking about it openly and taking ownership of that is something that I'm still getting really comfortable with. But thank you for those kind words. Yeah, I've been building the Healthy Hustlers for over the last 7 years now. So I basically, for some context, I have a background in marketing and I was doing talent management on the side, studied marketing and event management at university. So I've always had a very kind of clear understanding of the content space, the influencer space, how to make money from content, how to build communities. But I was always on the other side of the script, I guess, or the story. And so in 2018, I just had this real intuitive pull that I was here for something more. I kind of had that since a really young kid. And so I ended up quitting my marketing job and going all in on a podcast, which was at the time totally wild. Like casting was so not a thing. So from a self-leadership perspective in that moment, I think it really required me from the get-go to just put on that kind of hat, or even just to have that mindset of, I have no other choice right now. I have to make this possible. I'd left a, very well-paying, secure marketing job, one that like absolutely used to kind of define what success looked like for me. And I, at the time I was like, I can do this. But then literally letting go of that kind of salary and that title, I really had to step into some form of self-leadership and really treat my podcast like a business from the get-go. So before it was even kind of making money, I needed to treat it like a business. And it's something that I often talk to my clients about now is like, don't think of things as a side hustle or a good, It's nice to have and I'll do it later. If you actually go in with that mindset of, this is my business and I'm going to treat it like a business from the get-go before it even starts making money, I believe that energy is like you're communicating to the universe, like, I have capacity to hold more. I have capacity to hold this when I do start making the money. So yeah, from a self-leadership perspective, I really did take that approach. So One of the
Mm.
big things was probably, though, getting used to, I guess, when you're in a 9 till 5, even though it was longer than a 9 to 5, it was probably 9 till 7, there were strict working hours, and I remember that was kind of a really big shift for me at the start of, like, realizing I could start my day before that or I could start my day after that. But I
Mm.
have found as I've gone on, I've kind of fallen back into, in a nice way, that 9 till 5. Like, I have a starting 10 o'clock now because I have 2 kids. So 10 o'clock is my work time, 3 o'clock is my knock off time. And that in itself has actually been a really good boundary that I've implemented, because I feel like when you are in that 9 till 5 and then you go out of it, you try to, like, I spent years trying to break that mindset. But I'm like, hang
Mhm.
on, that actually really supported me because I was very efficient in those days. I then knew that I had time for self-care. So I wasn't like self sacrificing, because it's like, no, I
Mhm.
turn my laptop off, I switch off from work. And so that was kind of something that I ended up re-implementing, especially once I had children, was, no, these are my work hours. I have quite strong boundaries now around work. I have an email that goes out on every day. If someone emails me, there's like a bounce back that says, I only work these days, I only reply on these days. So things like that from a leadership perspective, I feel like there is a lot of noise of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. But for me, that's felt like it's given me a lot of kind of sense of security. And then when I'm on work-wise, I'm on. Like, I know that I've got those
Mm.
5 hours in that day, and this is what I need to get done.
Yeah, I really love how you were speaking about like what I should do and what I shouldn't do, because you've really shifted it into what I choose to do by setting your boundaries,
Mm.
and that really is such a strong part of self leadership. And I guess this dives into what my next question is what are the non-negotiables or the like the guiding values that have helped you build your brand while still building a really strong following in your community as well?
Well, I think having a marketing background and working from a brand lens for a lot of years, where we would pay, say, content creators or influencers to promote our brands, I had a lot of understanding from a brand's perspective of what it looks like when you've paid someone and then 2 months
Mm.
later they're promoting another brand in a similar field. So from a very early on, I created a non-negotiable, or a boundary non-negotiable, that I would only align myself with brands that I genuinely love, that I genuinely use. And once I work with them, they're the brand that I kind of stick with, regardless if they're paying me or not. And I think that
Brilliant.
that is something that has served me really well. I also have very strong boundaries around who I will and won't work with. And a big one for me, actually, even at the end of last year, at the end, I actually got offered a $4,600 brand deal right before Christmas. But at the time, I was dealing with an agency. They couldn't release the brand name. And so they just kind of told me what the idea of the campaign was. They thought I was a really good fit. I had worked with them before as well. So I was like, well, they obviously understand my boundaries around my values. So for me, it was like working with, I don't overly use toxic chemicals or toxic
Yeah.
brands. My lens is very focused on health and good for you kind of products. So when I got the contract, the name of the brand was in there, and it was just so disaligned with a brand that I would personally purchase, that I would use on my skin, on my family, on my kids. And so I declined the offer. It was kind of a big moment of just self-reflection of how strong I actually am, to, like, it's one thing I think to say, like, I value this and I do this,
Mhm.
but like to actually have that put on the table, and for me to be so true to the embodiment of my work and my values, I was really proud of myself, because it wasn't even, I didn't even second guess it. I was just like, saw it and I was like, no, absolutely no way. There's no way I could do that. And so I, yeah, declined the offer. And I think that those kind of non-negotiables really then show that you are the true embodiment of your work. So for me, I really believe the more that I am the embodiment of my work, the greater the
Yes.
opportunities I will attract. And although that might not happen overnight, like, I know in my heart of hearts, we need to just really own and know that that is absolutely not in alignment with me. And I'm comfortable trusting that something better and more aligned is going to come.
Yeah, and I really love that setting those boundaries and having those non-negotiables is really helping you stand in your integrity of what you are.
Totally.
And that's a big thing, isn't it? Like understanding what your vision, mission, and values are on a really deep level. And you've said that several times, like that embodiment and feeling what those vision, mission, and values are has
Yes.
really allowed you to step in your integrity and go, well, no, I'm not going to do that because I have a vision and mission to show to my followers and my audience. And if I go that way, I'm going against that.
Absolutely. And I love that you said integrity because it's so interesting. I hosted a workshop for a mastermind group and I actually shared that story about because it was all around how to secure brand partnerships and work with aligned brands. And so I shared that story in the masterclass about how I declined that offer because I'm so embodied kind of in my values of what I will and won't do from an
Yeah.
online perspective. And I got a lady jump in my DMs, one who she'd never followed me or anything. She just saw me in the masterclass. She jumped into my DMs and she's like, I've been wanting to launch a podcast for so long. And your story, like you really showed me that you're actually the embodiment of integrity and you're who I want to work with. And so we ended up signing, yes, I didn't do the brand deal, but I got this beautiful, super aligned client who had never knew me or my work prior to that. But that story explained to her, she actually fully shows up for that. So it can come back in so many different magical ways. And I think that that's, there's so many kind of sellouts, I guess, or people that are just easy to jump on the next kind of buck. But, I'm really here to build something that is long-term and that has a legacy. And so for me, it's not about the quick.
Yeah, and I really love that, Maddie, too, because we've had lots of conversations about this, is that being in your integrity and really standing by what your legacy is, you're going to attract those clients that are truly aligned to you and that value the knowledge that you can bring to them as well. And like you said, there's people that shift and change and don't actually sit in what they truly believe. And then they start feeling misaligned and their business isn't going the way that they want it to, or they're feeling like, well, their clients are hard work because their clients aren't aligned to who they are. They're aligned to what they're putting out there.
Exactly. It's so true.
Yeah. Yes. And so recently, as you just mentioned, you have just shifted into coaching, which is really exciting. And I'd love for you to share what inspired this shift into coaching, as you've got this incredibly successful podcast. So what has inspired you and what has been the biggest internal narrative as you've stepped into this to overcome?
Oh, that is such a juicy question, but I love
Yeah.
that. Well, I'll be completely honest. It was absolutely never, ever on the bingo card or the vision board, as they might say. I never really had an intention to be a coach. And as you know, I even struggle with the word coach. We both probably lean more in towards mentor. And I think for me, I really look at mentor as it's a partnership. And that's what I
Yes.
feel like with my clients. I will teach you and guide you from a podcasting lens, but I also have all of this other knowledge around content creation and making money and feeding into your now coaching business. And when you're in my world, there's absolutely no gatekeeping. I want to see people thrive. And that's what I think mentorship is. It's that partnership and we're in this together. And like a lot of the time, I feel like I become more invested in my clients' businesses because I'm so passionate about them, and then I forget to do the things in my business. Oh, hang on. But I get so lit up by it. It's just the best. So yeah, it was never really on the cards. I always had an intention to create a course. So just kind of thinking it was more going to be a self-paced video course around how to start a podcast. But I know we both work with Christy Gray, an astrologist, and a big part of my astrology chart, birth charts, is being in this kind of teacher coach role. And that was a really big missing piece, I think, for me of like the overall puzzle of me. And also from human design lens, that's definitely when I kind of like shine when I'm in these like teacher guide roles. I love bringing people together. I just love seeing people thrive. So it really
You're a
did.
projector, aren't you? You're a
I'm a
projector. So
projector.
they are the guides.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm a 4/6 line, which is
Me too.
really
Yeah.
around, bringing people together and that level of connection. So it makes so much sense why I'm in this and why I'm so fulfilled from it. But it was never in my overall vision. But what I did set out to do was to create a course. And so when I did finally launch the course, it went quite well. I got these beautiful women in and I was so lit up by it. I thought, oh my goodness, I just want to do more and more of this. So I did end up investing in a coach to kind of just figure out like what that all looks like. I think from the podcast lens, because I had such a solid marketing and content creator talent management background, that has always been quite an easy process for me. From the get-go, I knew how to sign brands. I knew how to, budget and pitch things. I knew how to secure media opportunities. All of that was very kind of like natural and easeful for me. But then moving into the coaching was like a whole different world and a whole different ball game. How to price things, how to do systems, all of that.
That's the narratives that
The
have been
narrative.
happening for you to
Yes.
overcome. So I guess, you were just saying how, bringing in those new systems and understanding how to run a coaching business as opposed to the marketing business has been like a big
Mhm.
narrative for you to overcome.
Definitely. And I think from a self-leadership lens, I have always had a story that I'm not an organized person. I'm always had a story that
Mm.
I'm never on time. I'm always late. A text message that I would send 5 times a week when I'm having a catch up is, I'm running 10 minutes late. Sorry, story of my life. And I've realized I really lean into that. And as growing up,
Mhm.
we were always late. My parents were late for everything. And I have those silly jokes of like, oh, I'll be late for my own funeral. I really need to stop. And I've been very diligent when it's in that coaching mode and I'm hosting a group or a one-on-one that I'm like, I'm on, like I open it the moment that we're due to kind of be online. And so there was a lot of narratives around organization and around time. So
Mhm.
I've really had to kind of like master those. And for an organization, just one, because I feel like a lot of women, especially when you're juggling kids, a career, all of the things, we have such busy, active minds. And so for me, from an organization one, a big thing that I actually did was really lent into how can I give myself evidence that I am an organized person? And
Yes.
so I actually started to really use my home as that. And so I got really good at decluttering our cupboards. So every time I open those, because they're my daily touch points, I look at it and I'm like, I'm such an organized person. I'm so
Yes.
organized. And then just kind of implementing really, really small habits that were easy for me to kind of do and fulfill. So I didn't feel like I was letting myself down. But things like packing the kids' lunch boxes the night before, I was like, no matter
Yes.
how tired I am, no matter how much I have to do, I have to pack their lunch boxes and fill up their drink bottles. So that is kind of become a real non-negotiable. And in the mornings, it's that reminder that I wake up and I'm like, I'm so organized. I did that last night. And so it's just
Yes.
those little things that are one, easy to stay true to, but then just continue to remind me that I'm actually an organized person. Systems was a big thing from a coaching perspective that I found so overwhelming. I'm very fortunate that I do have an amazing VA team who do kind of do the implementation of it, but trying to wrap my head around like automations and stuff, I was like, I had so much resistance towards it because it just felt
Mhm.
so foreign to me. And it was actually came up in my astrology strategy session with Christy in December. She's like, 2025 is like all about systems for you. And you really need to hone in on getting all of the systems set up so that you can actually hold the growth that's coming in the next few years. But like that process, that narrative in itself, it was always a like, "Oh, I'll do that later. I can do that later." And I'm like, no, you are a businesswoman who wants to hold more. How would you lead yourself? And how she
Yes.
lead herself is to actually take action. So I was like, where am I going to take action? So I took myself to a cafe that has like lots of nature around it. They have matcha lattes. I locked in and I did all of the emails, and leaving that experience, I was so proud of myself. I've just stepped in and embodied the woman
Yes.
that I would be. And so it's just like a new level of that this year. It's like, okay, well, if I want to call in that kind of level of income, I need to be able to do these things that ultimately move the needle and free up the space. Automations free up the space for someone to sign up to my business, get everything that they need, and I don't show up until I'm in front of them on a computer.
Spoken about like two really key aspects that I do teach my clients. And I'm just so excited that, because of the journey you've been on, you can actually do it so easily. And one of them is like activating your RAS, so your reticular activating system. And so
Yes.
that's what you've been doing. And just so the listeners can understand how Maddie was, making it evidence that she is organized. And so that's actually teaching your brain that I am organized. And before that, you were actually saying, I'm always late. I'm never going to be on time. So you were actually teaching your brain that that's who you are. So you shifted and changed that, which is so amazing. And then also so passionate about being your future self now and
Mhm.
not faking it till you make it though, like
Yes.
actually being who you want to be now and start having those habits and changing the way that you behave so that you are that now, not faking it till you make it, which is you literally are the embodiment of that, Maddie. So
Oh,
thank you
I
so much for
love that you
sharing that
said
journey.
that. Oh, thank you, Danny. And I love that you said the faking it till you make it, because my story and my whole belief through my working career until I went out on my own was that I fake it until I make it. Because I
Mm,
finished university, I just moved very quickly in my career. And I was like, oh, that's just because of like my personality, my energy, and I'm good with people. I actually have no idea what I'm doing. Like that was my story. I was like,
mm,
I'm doing, but I'm literally faking this. And then I remember getting to a point where when I shifted into doing the Healthy Hustlers, a big story and belief was that I'm not smart enough because I didn't do well at school. I got like, I don't know, 45 enter school, like got P's through university, like very much just there for the life and the lifestyle.
mhm,
And so a big story that I had to rewire was that I'm not smart enough. And I
mm.
really started to realize, well, smart, what does smart look like? And I actually have this beautiful book that I read to my kids all the time. And it's all around, it's actually written by a psychologist, I'm pretty sure. And it's all around how we're smart in our own little ways.
Yes.
And so it's like moments of crafting is really smart. And having moments of knowing you need quiet time and alone in your thoughts is really smart. And it goes through this whole journey, and I read that book with my kids all the time, and I just think we are all so smart in our own ways. But it was a
Absolutely.
story that I really lent into. I'm not smart enough to do that. Who am I to do that? You know, like I fake it until I make it. Like it's just because I'm an outgoing person and I'm good with people. Like I just fake all of this. And I'm like, no, there's like some things absolutely you can put on a persona for and be a little bit more, but you still have to be the person that shows up for it every day, that actually
Yes.
delivers. Like there's only so much faking you can do until it becomes completely see-through and everyone's like, oh, this chick's just, a total joke.
Yeah, I agree so much. I so much. And you've mentioned a few times you've invested in coaches, and
Yes,
both you and I are very passionate that
definitely.
no matter how much you know, there's somebody that can guide you and you can invest in
Totally.
them. What would be, would you say, one key tool or practice that you've learned along the way with working with your coaches?
I have always, from a very young age, had the belief that your network is your net worth. So from a
Mm,
really young age, I saw my dad and my uncles have very incredible, expansive networks. I was too young to realize like what those networks were, but they would always be in the rooms with the right people. And when something went wrong in life, they always had someone there to kind of support them, or it'd be like, oh, yeah, no, Johnny knows so and so there. And I remember when I got my first house in Melbourne, for example, when we moved into this little house, a bit of a backstory, but we moved into this tiny little house and I was 18 at the time with my best friend. My dad came, he's like, you cannot live in this place. Like, this is crazy. Calls one of his like best mates who's a real estate agent in South. It was a Melbourne Cup long weekend as well. Called his best mate. He's like, oh, Maddie's moved into this house. We can't have her living there. Blah. He's like, yeah, no worries. I'll get it sorted. In 2 days over a Melbourne Cup long weekend, we had a house, two university students in in the like best place in Melbourne. And I remember just thinking, whoa, your network is so important. I'd just
yes.
seen it from such a young age. I've always poured so much into building my network. And that's where, from a coaching lens, I will always get myself in the room with people that I want to be more like, or that I want to learn from, that I want to be around, that I want to be friends with. Like, I'm so intentional with the spaces I put myself in. Obviously, we also just learn so much from that.
Mm,
But from a network perspective, the friendships that I've built from being in coaching groups, incredible. Just think that everyone should do it. And I think the other
mm-hmm,
belief I have is that, we are humans, we're here to expand. I feel so privileged that I get to live a human experience and have the opportunity every day to wake up and expand and to be a better version of me. And so I have a real hard time with any form of comfort, anything like even in a job. I just hate that feeling of being comfortable. And I think that
yeah.
that's what coaching and mentorship does to you, it's like expanding you
Oh,
constantly, stretching you. It's pulling you into your next level, your next evolution. That accountability as well that comes with it. Like when you're investing in yourself at that level from a financial perspective, you want to do better. You want to show up. You know, you
mm-hmm.
want to show up to your coach. You want your coach to be commenting on your stuff. So I feel like there's just so much that comes from mentorship that is so much bigger than even just what you actually physically learn. I think,
Absolutely.
I am so glad that it is such a big thing. I know coaching world can get a bit of a like there's so many coaches, but when you're actually intentional with the people whose world you go into and what that expands in you, it's like into none.
And
And
I think
I,
that's so wonderful that at such a young age, you really learnt about your network as your net worth. Because for
mm,
me, I've done over 2 decades of professional and personal development. And at the very beginning, and for a really long time, like I would say for at least 15 years of that time, I
mhm,
really shrunk myself down to put myself in networks that were not supportive and
mm,
that supported me not being successful. And when I was successful, judged me. So
mm,
I really admire that you learned how to do that at a younger age, because it took me many, many years to find that. You know, I
yeah,
always really, because I'm a 4/6 in human design as well. So I always really cherish being in community and
mm,
supporting people. So I always did that. But
yeah,
because of limiting beliefs, and it's another podcast for another day, I put myself in circles where I shrunk myself and I didn't show who I truly was. And it took me a really long time to stand up and really be brave enough to speak about who I truly am and what I believe in. So that's so
mm.
admirable.
That takes so much courage though, Danny. Like for me, I think I look at it and I'm like, well, how privileged was I to be able to see that from a young age? Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
Like to have
yeah.
that in front of me and to have that as evidence from, like I said, even though I couldn't understand it young, I always knew that like, oh, you know, my two of my uncles in particular, like they just were very expansive in the way that they lived their life, the opportunities that they had. And I used to always just think like, wow, like they do cool things, you know? And then as I
Mm,
got older, I understood how those opportunities and how they attracted that stuff was from the networks and the connections. But I feel like for you, it's also so brave for you to be able to realize that. Like so many people go through life just thinking, oh, well, you know, and the school system doesn't help us when
no.
like I was fortunate to move out. I moved out of my hometown at 18. So I had this like almost clean slate too to kind of like, hey, who do I want to be? Who do I want to show up as? Like,
Mm,
um, but you know, we're put in a school system with limited kids in your class, and it's like, well, you got to make your friends here. So if you don't get on with Johnny and James, it's like, oh well, who else do I have? There's only Jack left, kind of, you know, like we are kind of like almost conditioned to think in that way that they're the people that I have to stay friends with. And
yeah.
it's an ever evolving journey for me too, but it's definitely something my husband has struggled with a lot because of going to primary school, high school, same systems with people, really cherishing lifelong friends. And for me,
Mm,
you're here for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Like, and I'm super comfortable with letting go of people, not in a nasty way, just as in a like, this isn't serving me, I'm going to remove myself. But
yeah, that's so
that's
strong.
also taken a lot of like work, especially in the last few years of being even more comfortable with that on a like even deeper level because friendships then have been for an even longer period than maybe in my 20s. But I think for
Yeah.
anyone listening who's like, it's really about bringing awareness to it, isn't it? At the start, like you
Yes.
start to have awareness. So actually being reflective when you leave an environment of like, how did I feel in that moment? A few key things that would come up for me is like before going to certain group things, I would be super conscious of what outfit I was going to wear. And then I would put the outfit on and I wouldn't feel enough. And I'd get there and I'd be like, oh, far, I should have been wearing the other thing. And like, I would be super self conscious of what I would say and how much I would say. And
Yes.
so if I said something, I'd be like, oh, but you know, also trying to be the people pleaser, nice person. And then I'd leave the situation and I'd be so paranoid. Did I say too much? Did I drink too much? What are they saying about me? And all of that, if you don't have awareness for that, which for quite a few years I didn't, I just thought that these people, like certain people were my friends and that was the environment I was in. And then I started to really be like, hang on, I shouldn't feel like that when I'm leaving because I
No.
have these friendships. I don't feel like that at all. I don't second guess what I'm going to wear. I don't second guess how many drinks I had or what I said. I actually just leave thinking, wow, I laughed so much and that was such a fun experience. So bring awareness to how you feel when you leave certain people's energy or their spaces. And if it
And even
is
going into it, like the way you feel going into it,
totally,
understanding that there's something there. It could be a story you're telling yourself, but then be aware of what is that story that you could be telling yourself as well. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
And then, you and I know we talk about it a lot, but it's like, how do you continue to get yourself in the environments of what you want to be around? So
Success.
I always think like, how do I want to feel in a friendship? Well, I want to feel really expanded. I want to feel valued. I want to feel very calm in my nervous system. And then it's like, so become that person and then start putting yourself in the rooms. Women
Yes.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And seek it out. Don't wait for
Seek
it to
it out.
come to you. If you want
Yeah.
to be successful in business, if you want to be successful within who you are, seek it out and do the work, because that's what's going to get you there. Absolutely.
And that's what putting yourself in the spaces. It's like these mentorship groups and like working with you and going into your environment as an example is like you're going to be connected with other people that have that same
Mhm.
desire, that same energy, that same frequency. And that builds friendships that will just light your soul on fire.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay, I've got one last question for you, Maddie. And as you know, my framework is embody. So
Yes.
it's energy, mindset, body, ownership, direction, and you. So you know that framework. So when you think about the journey that you've been on, and if you think about the framework, what do you think has been your strongest pillar of that framework to get you to the success that you're in? Because you're very successful, you know exactly where you want to go, you know exactly who you are. So what would be the, I guess, strongest pillar for you?
I feel like over the journey, I've used all of them and there's been
Yeah.
different ones that have kind
Mm.
of been the thing that I've worked on or honed in on to kind of, obviously, as you know, you need all of those for it
Need
to
all of.
work in harmony, all of them. So I would say at the moment, if we look at this season or this year, it's
Yeah.
definitely you more from like, I had a huge approach this year. Last year, I invested a lot in business coaching. This year, the focus was very much on my internal world. I knew that like
Mm.
feel this pull of like outgrowing certain beliefs or, situations. And I felt this real pull to nurture my internal world. Also, I really believe the universe is always communicating with us. And at the end of last year, I kept seeing the quote, which I think Lewis Howes first promoted it, but it was basically the philosophy is like, if you water the garden, the butterflies will come.
Mm.
And that philosophy kept being on, like I kept hearing it on people's podcasts and seeing it everywhere. And I was like, nurture the garden, water the garden being my internal world, and the
Mm.
butterflies will come. The opportunities, the people, the clients, it will come if I'm looking after the internal.
Oh,
And
I'm
so
such a strong believer on this.
yeah, so I'm really this year, honestly, like, and sometimes it can feel selfish. Like for me, the big story was like guilt and selfishness to be pouring into my internal world, going on a retreat, going to yoga regularly, like working with like a spiritual mentor, all of these things that were not like a tangible moving the needle in the business to get me from X to Y, Z. But I know that in the long run, it's going to be the thing that like obviously
Mm.
spreads out. So yeah, that is probably what has been the strongest this year. But
Mm.
for anyone listening who is ready for that next expansion or that next level, you need all of those things to be working in harmony for you
Yes.
to be able to continue to attract and level up.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with what you said is watering the garden. You
Mhm.
really, truly, deeply need to water that garden to get to that next level of success, to really embody who you are in the legacy that you're building. So thank you so much, Maddie. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast and for you to share with my listeners all your wisdom and so many fun stories for them to take away and understand more, because stories really help people understand the concept of how you can build your success. And it's just been such an honor to have you here. And I really look forward to sharing this with my audience.
Thank you so much for having me. I just adore you so much. I adore what you're doing, your energy, everything about you. So
Well,
thank you so much for having me.
thank you, Maddie. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on the Danny V Show today. I hope you're leaving this episode feeling inspired and empowered. My goal is always to bring you elegant insights with a bold impact. If you enjoyed our conversation, I invite you to subscribe to the show and leave a quick review. Your feedback not only means the world to me, but it also helps other growth-minded leaders find this community. Remember, leadership is an inside-out journey. The poise, the passion, and the purpose we cultivate within ourselves are what transform the world around us. So until next time, stay true to your vision and keep leading with the unique mix of grace and strength. Stay radiant, stay resilient, and I'll be right here cheering you on. I can't wait to hang out with you again on the next episode of The Denny V Show.